Over the last century, the church's impact on society was often measured by social action. The social gospel, it was called, pushed public policy agenda like anti-poverty programs, support for public education, women's rights, civil rights for minorities, gay rights, environmental activism. There is still some of that going on in mainline denominations such as ours and the Methodists, the Presbyterians, the Episcopalians. In the days of the social gospel, the institutional church was expected to be the conscience of society, speaking truth to power, advocating for social change for the betterment of our culture. There was, however, during the past century, also a counter-movement building among evangelical churches such as Baptist, Adventist, Pentecostal, independent Bible churches, which insisted on seeing Christianity not so much about the social impact that it would have on society, but seeing Christianity in personal terms. One's own salvation, that's what mattered to them. Personal assurance that they would get to their heaven bound when they died, or if the rapture came and took them to heaven early, whichever came first. From this evangelical perspective, this world that we live in, the world of society and nature and all the rest, was a fallen creation. It was led by sinful people in rebellion to God, and it was destined to be destroyed by God's judgment. And frankly, there are many Christians who think that way. For these people, the efforts of the social gospel, that is, the efforts to change the world for the good of humanity, was considered pretty much irrelevant to God's plan of salvation, because God's plan of salvation they understood to be a personal decision. It was about you and God and your relationship. For the evangelicals, the social aspect of the gospel that Jesus had taught, the gospel that Jesus lived daily, and the gospel he died for, was minimized. This idea has spread widely in the last 20 or 30 years here in America. The authors, actually several of them, in the book Unchristian, who spent 3 years of extensive interviews and research among young people who are not active in local churches, as well as examining more than a dozen nationally representative surveys reflecting thousands of views. They want us to see what Christianity looks like from the outside. See, we who are church-going people habitually are inside the church, and we see it the way we see it. But this is a book about how the people who don't come to our church see us. I quote, "Young people today are incredibly candid," they write. "They do not hold back their opinions. For many people, the Christian faith looks weary and threadbare. They admit that they have a hard time actually seeing Jesus because of all the negative baggage that now surrounds him." Unquote. The Barna Group, based in Grand Rapids, who are behind this book, has studied social trends, lifestyles, and public opinion among more than 200,000 Americans. And they write, and I quote, "In many ways, young people perceive the world in very different terms than people have ever before. For example, their lifestyles are more diverse than those of their parents' generation, including education, career, family, leisure, values. Young people do not want to be defined by a normal lifestyle. They favor a unique and personal journey. Many young people do not expect to be married or to begin a family as a young adult, if at all, although this may have been the expectation in the past. Being loyal to one's friends is one of their highest values. They have a strong need to belong, and usually to a tribe or other loyal people who know them well and who appreciate them, making them unlikely to join a larger organization in which they are just one member among many. Younger adults consume more hours of media from more sources than do older generations. Many enjoy immensely the latest movie, the hottest music, website, or pop culture buzz. Smartphones and other technologies connect young people to information and to each other in ways that older adults do not fully appreciate. Mobile devices power their self-expression and their creativity. Young people engage in a nearly constant search for fresh experiences and new sources of motivation. They want to try things out for themselves, disdaining the self-proclaimed experts and the talking head presentations. They prefer casual and comfortable to stuffy and stilted. They may tell someone what that person wants to hear, but then they will do whatever they desire, unquote. Now, if this is the basic context in which millennials and Generation Z young people interact with Christianity, we old-line, mainline, church-going Christians have our work cut out for us. The authors of Unchristian say their research shows that when it comes to matters of faith, young outsiders feel they know what Christians want before any words are ever uttered. A generation reared in a marketing-drenched world is quick to sniff out what they believe to be the underlying motivations and superficialities. The book quotes Sean, age 22. Christians are too concerned with converting people. All I ever hear is get saved. I tried that whole Jesus thing already. It didn't work for me before, and I'm not interested now. Unquote. So the Jesus thing that Sean says he tried is not related to the gospel that Jesus taught and lived out and died for. It's been tied in his thinking to this matter of personal salvation, proselytizing, conversion, getting other people saved and joining their ranks. Now, having grown up as a congregational Christian myself, I never even heard of that whole personal salvation perspective until I became a chaplain's assistant in the U.S. Army. And then I ran into it in a big way. It was all around, and every denomination I bumped into had a sense of that personal salvation, going to heaven, being the target of preaching. Now, I'm still a social gospel kind of guy, a holdout of the old way of thinking of church. But even among those people like me who wish that the power of the church might be used as a major force for good in the world, or serve as a public guardian of values that can confront the more arrogant expressions of our politicians and our leaders of business and finance and the other social powers, as much as I wish that the power of the church could be used for good in society, I'm scaling down my expectations. Because too many unchristian values have been seen among church leaders. Too much of a partisan bias has infected church pronouncements. For the ordinary church-going person like me to have confidence in the spokespeople of the institutional church, we're getting disillusioned. And to be honest, this skepticism toward partisan bias in church pronouncements has been growing in me for several years. The United Church has always been among the first at the forefront of social change. It's an admirable legacy that we carry, but we're getting more highly politicized, and we're getting a little peculiar as to which firsts we choose to pursue as a denomination. So when these researchers ask people in the pews, why do you relate to church? What they tell are personal stories, none of the social agenda. They say the church supports them through the ups and downs and changes of life. They say the church offers help in time of crisis or trouble. They say belonging to a church is important because of the special dimension it adds to their daily life. It's a place to worship, to pray, to learn, to sing. It gives opportunities to serve others. It's a place where they find friendship, where they find community. It's a place where they reflect on the larger issues of life beyond all the stress and chaos of what's in the news 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And to some, going to church is the best Sabbath rest they get all week. So if you doze off during my sermon, I say it's okay. If Sabbath rest is what you need to balance your life, you'll get it here. So what I get from all that research is a sense that personally, people need and want the local congregation. Even if the social values of the church in general is being questioned, they want their local church. They want to be there with and for one another. In other words, the ministry of the church, which once was in general out there, has largely become privatized. We come to church for what's in it for us. Now, I know I preached a whole sermon about what's in it for me just 2 weeks ago. And since it's available on the website, I don't want to repeat it this morning. But let me remind you that in the United Church, the basic unit of the church is the local congregation. This is the church, the gathered people, us who are here. That's what I mean when I say the church. I'm talking about all y'all. It's not our denomination with the national offices in Cleveland. It's not the Michigan Conference where Edith and I and Gene Bacon were last weekend as delegates to our annual meeting. Those are settings of the church. Yes, they are settings, but they are not the local church. We listen to those expressions of the wider church because we work together with those structures in order to get our church's wider mission accomplished. Beyond the confines of what we could do here in Alpena, we're connected to the associations, conferences, and General Synod in order to have an impact around the world. However, because congregations are autonomous in the United Church of Christ, we don't have to pursue the agenda that they would like to set for us if we choose not to. In other words, we are not a branch office of some national corporation. Our church relates to other churches, both in the community and in our denomination, on voluntary basis. We choose what we want to emphasize by way of mission in our community, something to make a difference for our people around us here. We own our own property. We hire and fire our own ministers. We cooperate and we collaborate with other congregations in